Hey, my name is Brent here on Cloudy with the Chance of Meeples. Today we're going on an adventure to a mysterious island. Legend has it that this island once was home to the Archeans, and they had the ability to possess the powers of the four elements. Today we're checking out the 2 to 4 player game from Gamewright Forbidden Island. Okay, so setting up Forbidden Island, you make a little grid that looks like this. It shows in the rule book. Before I show you how to play the game, I'm going to show you how amazing this game looks. Everything from the tiles to these little miniatures. This is fantastic. You got the little fire. Let's just show you all of them while we're at it. You got the Statue of Wind. I think this is called the Ocean's Chalice. And then this one, I don't exactly know what it's called, but it's unbelievable. And yeah, these tiles, they just look super cool. This is my favorite, Phantom Rock. Super cool. They're thick. They look just absolutely fantastic. So setting up, you make a grid that looks like this. And then you pick an adventurer. So there's 6 different ones. You have the navigator, the diver, the engineer, the explorer, the pilot, and the messenger. Randomly pick one for each player and then take the corresponding pawn and put it on their starting one. So if I was the pilot, he would go on Fool's Landing, and let's say I'm the, or someone else is this guy that's told the engineer. He goes on the Bronze Gate. You then take all these treasure cards and you shuffle them up. You give 2 to each player. Shuffle up the island deck. This is how we're going to, this is the game that's against all the players. You shuffle these up and then you flip over 6 of them, one at a time, and you flood those. So by flooding, you then flip it from the colored one to the blue one. It's underwater at that point. So I've set that up. This is what it might look like. And then you start the game. On a turn, a player can do up to 3 actions, and there's 4 different actions that they can do. One thing that they can do is they can move. So if I'm the pilot, I can move. That will be 1 action. Pilot actually is pretty cool. He, for his actions, can fly. For 1 action, his special ability can fly from just once anywhere across the board. They all have their own special ability, but that would be the pilot. So you can move for 1 action, or move, yes. If you move 3 times, that would be your 3 actions. But one thing you could do is you can move. Another thing you could do is you could shore up. So I could move here and I could shore this up. That would be 1 action, 2 actions. I could also just shore it up if I'm on it. But shoring up, that's how you're kind of not preserving the game, but that's how you're not going to fail immediately, because if you lose certain tiles, then the game is over. So second thing you can do is you can shore up tiles. Third thing you can do is you can give treasure cards. So in order for you to claim, let's say this one, well, any of them, but I have a card here. So if you're gonna claim this one player would need to have 4 of these cards. And then if you have 4 of those cards, you go to that location, you hand them in, you discard them, and then you take that artifact in front of that player. You win the game by getting all 4 of them, having all the players on Fool's Landing, and then using one of these helicopter lift cards. The 4th thing you can do is, oh yes, you can capture treasure. So those are the 4 things. You can move, you can shore up, you can share cards and give them to people if they are on the same tile as you, and the 4th thing you can do is capture treasure. So after you've done those, your 3 actions, and sometimes you may only do 1 or 2, but after you've done that, then you draw 2 of these cards. We'll get to the Waters Rise cards right away. But you would collect these cards. You can only have a maximum of 5 in your hand at any time. If you ever have more than 5, you must discard down to 5. Say a Waters Rise card comes out. Then you would follow this. So the first thing you would do is move the water level up 1 tick. So if we started the game here on Elite, we would move it up 1 tick. There we go. Whatever section this is in, that's how many cards we will flip when we flood. And that will happen shortly. I'll explain that right away. But then after you would move that up, you would shuffle the flood discard pile and place on top of the flood draw pile. So at that point, we would flip over, or we would shuffle these up and put it on the top. So all the ones that have already been flooded earlier in the game will get reshuffled and put back on top, meaning that they'll come up that much faster. And then you would discard this into the treasure discard pile. So that would be the end of your turn, and then it would be the game's turn. And the game would then flip over tiles equivalent to where you are on this track. So in this case, it would be 3. So then we flip this over, Twilight Hollow. Okay, well, Twilight Hollow is already flooded. That means it has sunken. It's totally out of the game now. As you can see, the island is from the top view down, and as you continually go through the game, Fool's Landing would then flood. As you continually go through the game, you're going to start losing tiles over and over again, and it's going to slowly shrink, and that's just part of the game. So you're racing the game to get all 4 of these things. There's 4 ways in which you lose and only 1 way to win. The 1 way to win is all the players collectively have to have these 4 artifacts. All players have to be then on Fool's Landing, and you have to discard a helicopter lift card, and then you win. 1 of 4 ways to lose. If Fool's Landing ever sinks, you lose. If, let's say, both of these, Coral Palace and Untitled Palace, would sink before we would collect this one, we'd lose. And that's the same goes for any of these. Each of these artifacts have 2 different tiles that you can capture them on. If one of those or both of those are out of the game before you collect that treasure, you lose. Another way you can lose is if, let's say, my player is here and all of a sudden Howling Garden is eliminated. My player would then have drowned, and then that would be a way to lose. And the final way to lose is if you are in the game long enough that this goes all the way to the top and you hit the skull and crossbones, then you would lose again as well. I don't think you would ever have that situation starting in the novice or the normal, but definitely starting elite or legendary, that could definitely happen. So that, in a nutshell, is how you play Forbidden Island. So the final forecast for Forbidden Island. Back in 2008, Matt Leacock made the game Pandemic. You may have heard of it. Of course, we're kind of living in a pandemic, and lots of people are playing it while living in a pandemic. It's kind of a funny thing. But back in 2008, Matt Leacock came out with Pandemic, and then 2 years later, he came out with Forbidden Island. And I have to say, I just recently played Pandemic as well as Forbidden Island, and there are quite a bit of similarities to these games. I would say that Pandemic is more challenging. It takes a little bit longer, but for families, I think Forbidden Island is just a great entry level for cooperative games. It plays 2 to 4 players, and I've played it with my 7-year-old. I know the box says 10 plus, and I've loved playing this game with my son because it gets him thinking. It gets him like strategizing, thinking ahead. Well, if we do this, then this will happen. But if we really need this tile, so I think we should do this. And I think that's a great learning experience, much like all cooperative games. So for that, I think this game is really good. Furthering on that, with it being cooperative, there could be a negative side of that. If one person knows how to play the game and the other people don't, sometimes you have what's called an alpha gamer, or one person is quarterbacking. They pretty much just overtake the whole game, and they say, well, you should do this, 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 and then you just roll with it, and that's what you do. I know in the rules it says that you do your own turn, but you do need to work together. So, and that is, there's a fine line, I should say that. There needs to be a balance with alpha gaming and then just working together. But for younger kids, I think you could introduce this game to them even younger than the box says, because you can work with them. I think there's a lot of replayability in this game. I know I set up the tiles how the game rules say, but there is actually an official variant. It was published with the German edition of the game, and there are actually 10 other tile layouts that that you can use. And here, I'll show them to you real quick here. So yeah, you can use any of those 10 at any time, and then of course every time it's going to be random which tiles are where, and then you add that water level up or down, and I think you have a real solid game that has a lot of replayability that will challenge you each time. I will say a couple things, maybe not negative, but things, a word of caution. I think this game really needs to be sleeved. So if you're new to the board game hobby, sleeving, what does that mean? If you could see on the overview, my cards were really shiny. It looked like they had these clear protectors. Those are sleeves, and I think that's kind of imperative. It won't wreck the game if you don't. You can play it just fine. But as soon as cards start getting nicked, every time you're shuffling them, moving them around, they start getting nicked and bent. You'll start to see these as you're playing the game, so you kind of know what's coming up ahead and what cards are coming. So if you want the full experience of that tension and that excitement, I suggest sleeving them. I will also say this, in the very rare situation, you can actually lose this game on the first turn. It could happen that, you know, Fool's Landing starts flooded, all the characters on the one side of the board, you can't make it to there to shore up Fool's Landing, and then one of the first two treasure cards you flip over is a Water's Rise, and then you could lose. I think it's happened to me one time. Very small chance that it would happen, but it could happen. So, you know, if that happens, you pretty much just reshuffle the cards and you start another game. But that's a couple small things in this game that you gotta look out. But overall, this game is absolutely fantastic. The overview, you could see those tiles. They're thick. The artwork is just phenomenal. The little miniatures of those 4 relics that you're trying to collect, I think, look absolutely amazing. Every time I'm playing this game, I'm just picking these things up and just looking at them because they're just so cool. So overall, this game, just a gem. I'm rating it an 80% Chance of Meeples. I really think it's a good game. It's a great family game. I've enjoyed it many times playing with my son. My wife absolutely adores this game. And just if you're in the mood for a light cooperative game, 30 minutes, check out Forbidden Island, 80% Chance of Meeples. Until next time, my name is Brent. Find us on Facebook, Cloudy with the Chance of Meeples. Until next time, grab your umbrellas. The forecast is cloudy with a chance of meeples.